Welcome back to Behind the Caution Tape. I'm your host, CrashLit here, and today I am super excited to be joined by USC football alum and former NFL tight end Bob Klein, who played for both the Rams and the Chargers. Bob, I am super excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for joining
Well,
me.
well, thank you. It's fun for me to see the personal side of your life because all I'm used to doing is seeing you at the SC games, uh, screaming just as loud as I am for our Trojans. So it's wonderful to see the next generation is coming up just like we were, very
Yeah,
dedicated to you know dedicated to our great school. So anyway, I'm
absolutely.
happy to be here.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Love USC. Love everything about it. It's been just an incredible experience. Crazy to think it's ending, but like I said, let's get into this interview. So, like I said, really excited to have you on. So, I want to ask you like, kind of what got you into football and like you were a kid and just how old were you?
When I started playing football.
Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up in Pacific Palisades, and we there was no such thing as Pop Warner football and that. And so the first blush I had was when I was a freshman. I went to St. Monica's High School in Santa Monica, and uh, I had grown over the summer about 4 or 5 inches. So I was 6'5" and about 180. And so the coaches saw this kid and they said, "We're going to turn him into a football player, fill him out." And so I got started before the rest of my peers. And some of the kids had played Pop Warner and I had not. And so it was a little bit of a slow start for me, but it was a great experience. They put me at tight end, which was just the right position for me. I get to block, I get to catch balls, and of course, the tradition at SC through all those years has been fantastic. So I'm proud to be one of those alums.
Yeah, I did want to ask you about that next kind of you talked about kind of starting earlier. How do you think that gave you an advantage just I guess going into the recruiting process, especially once you kind of realized you wanted to do it at the next level and play in college?
Yeah. So luckily, so what happened to me in high school was my junior year. I was playing against Crespi High School that game, and I suffered a very serious injury to my left shoulder, and it pinched a nerve, which caused the deltoid muscles, which are the major muscles in the outside of your arm that causes your arm to lift up and down, all went dead, and I was not able to play football in my senior year in high school, but I did play basketball, and I did run track. I threw the shot, and I was on the relay team and some other things. I was fast enough, big enough that the coaches said, we got to invest in ourselves in this. And so, really, my three big choices, and I couldn't have gone wrong on any of them. The number one was UCLA because Tommy Prothor was coach, and John Wooden had just taken the team to the national championships, and I played basketball as well, and I could have played on that team over there in the new Poly Pavilion the very first year. I played it when I went to SC. I played against them over there, but that would have been fun. And then Notre Dame at the same time had fantastic teams. Eric Parsegian and that group of guys, just fantastic. And then of course Coach McKay, who was a character of his own, but he had unbelievable judgment, I thought, in recruiting and retaining coaches, his assistant coaches. You know, I he when he wrote his autobiography years later, he mentioned a bunch of his former players, and it turns out he says that I was one of his favorite ball players. Well, you could have fooled me. I don't think he talked to me more than once or twice in 4 years. He coached. He just would look at you. He let the assistant coaches do all the coaching, and but he got the job done, and we during that period of time had some amazing teams and results. So it was really, for me, it was a wonderful education. It was close to home. I was able to have all my family at the games and all my friends through the years and stuff. So fight on. It's been a great experience for me.
I do find that interesting though that you were heavily considering both of USC's biggest rivals for college. I did find that kind of interesting that you were looking at UCLA as well as Notre Dame.
Yeah, it seriously. I mean, any one of the three would have been. They ended up all having fantastic teams, and I played basketball as well. Especially my freshman year, we played against Kareem, Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, whatever you call him, against that team over at UCLA when they first built Pauley Pavilion, and that was the freshman team that beat the varsity over there. And Notre Dame was doing great. We played Notre Dame for a national championship, and we actually, I think my sophomore year, I think we lost to Notre Dame 3-0. Now, how about that for a high scoring game? 3-0.
I know.
Yeah.
No, I did want
Anyway,
to. Yeah, well, I
go
did want
ahead.
to now ask you about your playing against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then Lou Alcindor, because I understand you did a year of was it freshman basketball at USC before joining the varsity football.
Right. Yeah.
So,
And
so
Kareem, he was Lou was a a guy. Nobody had seen anything like him up to that point. He was fluid. He was, of course, enormously large, and we would be practicing to play them, and the coach would say, "You can't take that shot. You can't take that shot." Well, what's the matter with that shot? Well, you're going to eat the ball. That's why, because you have never seen the tree that you're going to be playing against. And he was really something very, very special. And of course, he's a special person because he's lived in Pacific Palisades, where we lived for many, many years. And so I've had bumped into him a number of times. I'm not his favorite person because the only way I could figure to defend against him was to try to rough him up and get him upset a little bit. So I used some of my football tactics on him through the years.
yeah, I was tipped
Yeah,
off and told I needed to ask you about your Kareem Abdul-Jabbar story.
yeah. He The last time I saw him, we were standing on a corner in Pacific Palisades, and I said hi to him, and he just looked at me, and he just gave me. That was it. Off he went. Anyway, I made an impression on him, but he was unbelievable, unbelievable ball player. That their freshman team was really something. As was Coach Wooden. That he would have been fantastic guy to. He was of John McKay's category. I think just absolutely amazing man, and did wonderful things with those athletes from not only from an educational standpoint, but from a personal standpoint on the men that he raised and the influence he had on. So he's quite a guy.
Now, I did want to ask you now about your time playing football. So, just obviously, like you, when you joined the team as a sophomore, how do you find yourself, fitting in with, you talked about the coach already, but your new teammates, especially, maybe like just everyone that, you were going to be playing with for the next few years?
Yeah, well, I don't know the exact number, but you know, what we had fantastic running backs, and I mean, really great linemen when I was at USC, and we had, I think, so many number one draft picks, and so I think the coaching staff when I was there felt, there was as soon as if you put the ball in the air, a couple things could happen. One of them was good, and the other one wasn't so good. And so, but handing off to the backs we had and handing out to OJ Simpson, that was a pretty good choice of what to do. So um, I was big enough as a tight end. I was a little bit kind of like the tight ends are now today, much bigger, heavier guys than before that. And so I fit right into the program, and it was great for us. It was great for my family. My family from Los Angeles, so my mom and dad and my wife and everybody, were able to be at all the games. And then getting drafted by the Rams, I got to stay right there at the Coliseum, my home. And then the last three in San Diego when we were down there, that was just a short drive down the coast. So I'm fortunate to be able to spend all my time right here in the greater Los Angeles area.
I did want to now ask, you did mention OJ Simpson, and I know I will not leave this interview alive if I do not ask you, what was it like playing with OJ Simpson at USC?
So the thing about OJ was unbelievable man in many ways, and remarkable athlete. And one of the things that you learn, that if you threw a block for him, don't lay on the ground, get up, and because he's not going down that easy, and you're going to throw another block and maybe make a difference. And his famous run to daylight play, where that's the one that they promoted many, many times. I actually threw two blocks on the same play. I threw a block at the point of impact where things were happening, and then he went in and cut off to the left and ran, toward the other sideline. I got up and started running back in that direction. And what happens? He comes and cuts behind me again. I make another block. So I looked like I was brilliant, but it was really OJ was the one that was doing all the hard work. We were just trying to get in the way of people.
Like I said, had to ask you, but I do now also want to ask you about what the 1967 season when you guys won the national championship. What was that experience like of, just doing so well and then being voted number one at the end of the season?
Well, the thing that I thought I loved about that whole experience was we had a great season, and then I got to play in three Rose Bowls, and that was the granddaddy of them all for us. And so the season always got extended all the way through January the 1st, and it was great because those friendships and relationships we built in those years. When you think about it, you look back and you know, the coaches were our enemies because they pushed us, they worked us, they made us do this, and those guys were absolutely the most fantastic coaches. And so many of them went on to other careers, head coaching jobs, and I think the best part about that whole thing was I think they treated us as a team. I never felt that there was anyone on the team that wasn't being treated fairly. And the only person I ever saw that got any special treatment were the quarterbacks, and the quarterbacks would sit in the front seat right behind the driver with Coach McKay, and the quarterback and the Coach McKay would talk from the hotel to the Coliseum. What they were talking about, I don't know, but that was the only time that I ever saw a one-on-one between Coach McKay and an individual on his team. And so, but the nice side about it, Steve Soggy, Toby Page, those guys were great, great leaders. OJ was a leader by example. He got a little mixed up a little bit later on there on some things, but when we were together, he was a fantastic guy. Al Collins was his buddy, and those guys were just the best to be playing with. We had so many first-round draft picks the last couple of years I played. It was fantastic. So it was great to have those friends through all these years, and the tradition and the history. I'm so happy I went to USC.
Yeah, and then speaking of first round draft picks, you were one of them yourself, Bob. 21st
Yeah,
in 1969.
yeah,
What was that like for you when they announced that you were being taken when the Rams selected you in the first round?
the I before I knew it, my next door neighbor on the street that I grew up on was banging on the front door. I don't know how he found out before I did, but I mean, everybody was so excited to be able to be drafted and stay at home and play in your hometown. Unheard of. Absolutely, so much fun. And so I played those 8 years with the Rams, and then I decided that before I got really hurt, I wanted to retire. So I did retire from the Rams, but Coach Coryell and Coach Levy, Dave Levy, was down in San Diego, and it was the end of training camp. And I was in retirement, and I was actually, hard to believe this, but I was in Costa Rica making a fishing film for American Sportsman. And it was like 10 o'clock at night, and we're out in the jungle in this place. And this guy goes, "Hey, there's a call on the radio phone that you've got to take. This guy says he's your agent, and the Rams want you to come back, or the San Diego Chargers want you to come back, and they'll pay you anything you want." Ooh, that got my attention. So off I went, and the next morning I got up, found my way out of there, and probably the best thing of that whole season was I got back 3 days before training camp broke with the Chargers, and guess who we played? The Rams.
Ooh.
So my very first game back, I got to play against the Rams, and I had a fantastic game. And all my old buddies and all the coaches and stuff like going, "Yeah, we had to piss you off more often. You really play well when you're upset." So
I love
anyway,
it.
yeah, so it was great to be the very first game back to have a good one against my old team.
And then what made you decide to not relocate your whole family down to San Diego and just make the commute every day from Palisades? Just you mentioned that earlier, and just what
Yeah,
made you
we
just
had
decide?
just
Sorry,
yeah
go ahead.
we had just we had three young children at the time. We had two of them in preschool, and then we just had another one. And so in those days, what we ended up doing was we got a house, rented a house in La Jolla, and the family came down, and our training camp was at the university down there in La Jolla, and so the family would come down, and playing in San Diego was like it was away but not away. It was close enough that I came back and forth so many different days for all kinds of things, and so it was a wonderful place to be. Because the Chargers were coming on strong. We had Dan Fouts and those kinds of people, and great coaches, and San Diego Superchargers. That's where that first song started. That was us, and we were really good. We scored lots of points. I caught more passes with the Chargers in 3 years than I did in eight with the Rams. And one of the fun things about the is Coach Coryell was he believed in just wide open offense and all kinds of stuff. And I got to do things that I never even imagined I would get to do. I got to go in motion. I got to split out. I got to do all this kind of interesting stuff. They get two tight ends at the same time in the game. There was nobody doing any of that stuff at the time. So it was really fun to be part of that early. I think it was really the first immersion of the tight end from just being the guy at the one side of the line, tight 3 feet, to being able to do all kinds of fun things and participate more in the offense.
Yeah, it sounds super fun. I mean, I kind of really enjoyed hearing those Chargers stories because I personally actually am a Chargers fan. Like, I grew up and I remember hearing like the San Diego Superchargers song like on TV
Yeah,
like before commercial breaks when they
yeah,
were still down there.
yeah. The stadium down there was a baseball stadium, pretty much to start with, and it was small enough. I think it was only like 45,000. So all the games were sold out, and people loved the Chargers down there, and it was just fun. Plus, it was close to home, and all I very many days would drive home back and forth from San Diego. It was 135 miles from my apartment in San Diego to my home in the Pacific Palisades, and so many times my buddies would drive with me for the day, come down in the morning, stand on the sidelines of practice, and then drive home that night because we had the little kids in school. I didn't want to move them, and so they would come down on the weekend. Got to know La Jolla a little bit, beautiful city, had a place there, so it was a great 3 years for me.
All right, I do want to ask just what were some of your favorite moments from just your NFL career in general, both with the Rams and the Chargers? Obviously, you talked about just, getting to play in a more creative offense, but just other moments too, I guess.
Um, I think probably the Monday night games were the games that were really special because they everybody got to see them, including all my relatives, my cousins, and everybody around the country. You know, the broadcasters were unique. Howard Cosell and all those. It was just a really emerging time for professional football at that point in time, and it was really fun to be part of that. And I think for me and for the Chargers, and when I played there, the tight end became a real weapon. And I heard this more than once. Coach Coryell, under his breath, saying, our defense is a little leaky. They're not really very good, so we have to outscore the other team. He would say that to a team, and so he would come up with some off we go. So he was credit guy.
I love it. And then I do want to ask, like, what factored? Obviously, you did 3 more years with the Chargers after you came back, and then what made you decide to retire after the 1979 season?
Well, I decided that I wanted to retire on my terms, not when I couldn't physically play anymore. and also I I had gone to graduate school and got a master's in business, and I had a group of people that I was working with in the real estate development area, and it was I just thought, just had the three greatest years down in San Diego. Nothing could be better, and so I decided it's time. I was confident that, and I was working in the off season as well as playing, and so I had built up a little nest egg of money, and so I said, I got more money than I ever thought I was going to have. So why don't I just not risk this anymore? Because there are people trying to hurt you out there. Can you imagine that on the football field? Those defensive guys, they're trying to hurt you all the time, and all I want to do is to get them out of the way, so my running back can come around and run. So anyway, I thought this is the time, and frankly, going back and forth to San Diego every day got to me.
Gotcha. And then what was it kind of like after, life after, retirement? Like what do you kind of move into doing after you just and stepped away from football completely?
Yeah, I had so we had children right away after we were married, and so it wasn't too long before I got myself into little league coaching and all kinds of other things. I was a full-time job. I worked hard. Um, and I had many lifelong friends, and I actually started taking up other sports that got me real involved. I started doing triathlons. I'm still biking from that experience 3 or 4 times a week. I ran many marathons. I ran the New York Marathon 3 times, LA Marathon a couple, San Francisco Marathon. I ran all that. The only thing I wasn't really very good at was the swimming part. So that was always, oh boy, that's a big one. So anyway, so I did a lot of that, and to this day, a lot of the guys I still hang out with, do things with, are people that I made friends with after football, and just became a regular, just one of the guys, was one of the dads, one of the guys in town, and so happy that we ended up and didn't move out of Los Angeles, because the 3 years I played in San Diego, it was literally driving back and forth. You could get back and forth to San Diego really easy in those days. Now you can't get past, Orange County without a really big deal. So
You,
anyway, it was a different time.
even for me to go home, it can take 2 hours if I were to leave like right now.
Yeah, yeah. So and the other thing about going back and forth to San Diego by air, in those days there were not a lot of direct flights to Lindbergh Field from around the country, and so many of the flights would land in Los Angeles, drop off the majority of the customers, and then fly from Los Angeles to San Diego. And they had many big custom jets and stuff. And I get on these planes, and there'd be 250 seats, and there'd be three of us.
Gosh.
So yeah, back, and it was easy. It was easy. So to do and had that opportunity.
I now want to come back to USC because your grandson, Dillon Klein, is currently a junior outside hitter for the USC men's volleyball program. What has that been like to get to, come back to USC and cheer on Dillon, especially, get to see him, repping the Cardinal and gold like you did?
Well, it was a thrill for us, to have him, pick SC. He is a fantastic athlete, and he's gifted. He's a leaper. You've seen him play as much as or more than I have, and plus he joined a fraternity. He did the same things I did, and he met a nice young lady. He's got a nice girlfriend that he met there, and he's going to class and studying. He's making the most of it, and for all of us in the family, we get to see him play in person, and it's absolutely fantastic. He made a great decision, I think, in picking USC.
It's been especially fun getting to know him, especially after I guess you could maybe say we were rivals in high school because I played for Balboa Bay, he played for MB Surf, and we beat him on our way to winning the national championship in
Oh
JOS.
yeah, Balboa Bay was, yeah, yeah, yeah. Balboa Bay was funny because of, the we were, there when our daughter Kristen, who was a great volleyball player herself, when she first started, there really weren't that many opportunities, and so many of us started these club teams, and the women grew faster than the guys did because they didn't have as many sports. And so the experiences we had at the junior nationals and national tournaments, getting to know the other teams. Of course, it's Balboa Bay, our teams and a few of the teams, one or two from the Bay Area. Those were the teams that had all the people, and then the other teams from around the country, they were focused on beating a team from California. The one thing that frustrated us as parents when our son Jimmy was playing was that we had these club teams, and these California guys, a group of 12 or 15 California guys, would go back to Indianapolis, and to start with, it was a mixed national championship. So they had boys and girls teams. Well, it didn't take long to figure out you can bring them together, but it's going to end up being a party. It's not going to be a national championship like you want. So for the first couple of years, it was all mixed together, and our team that we took back there was easily the best team in the country. Till the girls from Indiana and some other place found them, and the guys went. So we decided, guys, if you're going to do this way, you need to pay for yourself and get yourself back there to see what happens. Of course, they won the national championship the next year. Prove us wrong.
Yeah, Chuck, I got a few more questions for you, and then I'll let you go.
Sure.
What's been your favorite memory watching Dillon play, especially at USC?
He since he was a little guy, he really doesn't know how to frown. He smiles, and he just has the most upbeat personality that you could ever imagine. He's been that way since he was a little guy, and I think from the family standpoint, the thing that we hold our breath every time he jumps out of this, as and landing is, I don't know how he does it, but it's been fantastic for us to watch him, and he loves. I don't know if you watch him after a game, he'll come over and walk up into the stands and say hi to every of all the cousins, his grandpa, his grandma, his parents and stuff. And in general, he's got a positive attitude about life, and so it's going to do him well.
I don't think I've ever seen him upset at all, like in the time I've known him since his freshman year, which I think
No,
just speaks exactly to what you're saying.
Yeah. I'm sure underneath the surface he might be boiling a bit, but he's positive. Yes, that's his middle name.
Love it. And then, what's the best advice you've ever gotten throughout your life, Bob?
Best advice:
Yeah.
marry Mrs. Klein.
Okay. All right.
The best advice, gosh, I don't know. I think just I think take every day as the next day. That who knows what life brings you, from any standpoint, and so especially if you're an athlete, you can get hurt in 2 seconds, and all those dreams and all those things you've had can go out the window. So especially if you play sports, and you play a contact sport where you're going to really end up, causing some damage sometimes. You got to be very thankful and blessed.
All right, Bob Klein, thank you so much for joining me on Behind the Caution Tape today. It was an absolute honor to talk to you and hear about your story and just your career, and just also you really enjoyed getting to know you over these past few years watching Dillon play. And I'll see you again in a few hours tonight to see USC take on Stanford. So you got nothing going, USC fans, pull up, support the Trojans. That's gonna do it for us here. Thank you again to Bob Klein. I'll see you tonight, Bob, and fight on.
Yep. Okay. See you then. Bye bye.